Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, your internet shop teacher. Welcome back to the shop. And the purpose of this video is to do a paint job and a semi-restoration on this beautiful 4-inch Wilton vise. Now you may remember when I acquired this. I'll put a picture of the video right now if you want to see that. Yes, and this was given to me with a massive amount, I call it the mother load of other items, so thank you to Miss Kathy for giving me all that stuff. And this was the prize of that whole batch. And this vise, although it's rusty and needs to be painted and fixed up just a little bit, is almost like new. I'm not sure if it ever was used. After I clean up the jaws and examine right here, it appears that maybe it was never even bolted down. So these are wonderful vices, and let's talk a little bit more about Wiltons, and then I'm going to take this apart. This is a two-part video. In my shop I have 3 Wilton vices. This is just a little 3-incher. It's a cute thing, not as cute as the baby bullet, but it has a swivel vise. I've had this for many years, and it was made, these are all dated. This one was made during the war, 1945, or maybe right at the end of the war, 945, just after VE Day, I think. This is a 3.5 inch on the swivel base. Not crazy about the swivel bases, but it's very useful on this one because this one, and you've seen me use this before, has pipe jaws. So I can swivel it perpendicular to the bench to make my threads on pipe. By the way, the vise that I just showed you with the pipe jaws was made in 1977. This one, February of 1979, and this is an authentic color. I would like to leave the decal on it that says model 400, which stands for 4-inch. I love these rubber bumpers that they put on the handles, and the handle is not bent. So this is a nice example of a vise that isn't terribly old, but it's rusty, I think, from just sitting in a basement over the years. I like it because there's no swivel base, although the swivel bases can quickly be taken off and put into storage. If you don't like them, it raises the vise up a little higher than what I like. Okay, I'm going to get started by taking the movable jaw out, and it's a little tight because of the corrosion. And the dates are always marked, stamped right here on the key. You have to clean them off. It might be a little hard to read. I don't think that's going to show up. And if it does, I probably got it upside down. Okay, let's start by taking the jaws off, and I've already loosened them up with a big Allen wrench. Now let's spin them off with the DeWalt. And now I'll take the keeper off so we can pull the screw out of there. Of course, the screw is absolutely pristine and perfect. I'm not going to bore you people with an awful lot of rust removal because I've done that, and so have other people done it in many videos, but I'm going to use a chemical on the jaws, and then all of the rest of the derusting will be done just mechanically, that is with a wire wheel and a scraper and so on. But let's start with these so they can soak overnight. We'll put them here in a nice little sandwich Tupperware, and I'm going to use one of the popular derusting compounds here, and we'll just let it sit overnight. Like that. and I'll start derusting the other parts while this is working. I've got a bit of messy cleanup to do. I got to get the grease off of this U-clamp here and off of the screw, out of here and out of here. All done off camera with thinner. You know, I was going to use gasoline, but gasoline's too expensive. I'll have to just use lacquer thinner. Just kidding. Never use gasoline for cleanup work or anything for that matter. I have degreased the screw in this area, and in here as far as I can reach. I do not intend to remove the nut or the cap on the back because it's just in perfect condition. It would serve no purpose other than the satisfaction of knowing that it's clean and the old grease is out of there, but some of the grease is still white in color. Okay, to this point I've done a little work here. I've degreased the screw and the hole here and cleaned this up just a little bit, as well as this hole, and now it slides quite freely. I'm going to take it to the wire wheel now and clean all of this on the movable jaw. Okay, let's get started here. This is no fun, and this thing runs way too fast, 3450. It is a Balder, came from a school, and the tag is gone. I wish it was a 1750. That took about 15 minutes, and the movable jaw cleaned up quite nicely. Basically ready to degrease and paint, but now with the fixed jaw, the main casting here, this is really too heavy for me to hold while I'm using the stationary wire wheel, so I must suffer the indignities of the old Black & Decker 4.5 inch. By the way, I love the paddle switch. Of course, this is for professionals only. It is dangerous if you set it down. The whole thing can take off on you. Just ask Clark Easterling on that. So I think that's why they have pretty much eliminated them, and there is no safety switch here. This is an older one. Cord's not too bad. Now, earlier in the video I said that this vise probably had never been used. Well, it has been used, very lightly, but you can see some hack marks here. Can I zoom in on that, where somebody used it possibly with a cold chisel? But not bad compared to what you usually see on a 45-year-old vise. Apparently no one has beat on it. Bubba did not own it. It was owned by a rather prominent, well-to-do businessman. So he didn't do much in his basement, I don't think. There's a hacksaw mark, but I do not see any marks here where there was a bolt or a washer. Well, maybe there was, who knows. I guess it doesn't really matter. Now, I didn't do too much to this surface because I fully intend to mill that off. on the vertical mill. It probably was not very good to start with, nor does it really need to be, but that's my MO. Okay, this vise was made in 1945 and the war was just over, so it probably didn't go to the Army, or if it did, it would have been declared as surplus because almost all of the Wilton products went to the war effort. They made a lot of other things. By the way, their C-clamps are the best that I've ever seen. I may talk about that, but at this time in 1945, Wilton was located in Chicago proper. I'm not really sure when they moved to Schiller Park, which of course is a suburb of Chicago, and as far as I know, they are still there, made in USA. I do not know if they are made in USA anymore. Let me know, leave a comment. Okay, this Wilton vise is about ready for the paint shop. It just needs to be degreased and masked off, and I'm going to paint it. But before I do, I want to tell you something else about my restorations, which some people are going to say are superficial, but let me explain. Some people during their restorations go to a much greater effort than what I do, and God bless them for that. But can you see the flashing here left from the casting process? Many people would grind that off, smooth it off. You see it here also. I don't do that. I want to keep it authentic. Let me show you a couple things on the other part. There will always be casting defects, and they don't bother anything. It's just superficial, it's cosmetic, but some would fill that with body putty and sand it until it's as smooth as a 55 Chevy. Others would grind off the flashing right here, but who cares? It's on the bottom. And there's also quite a deep divot hole, a piece of sand fell in. I don't care. It's still a beautiful casting. I'm not going to fill those and get carried away. Then I would get discouraged and never finish the job. All right, let's move on to the jaws that have been setting in this chemical popular product for, about 36 hours. And I got a couple tips I read either in the comments or in YouTube videos, but they said if your product doesn't quite fit in there, the depth isn't quite right, put a paper towel or something on there and it will do the job for you. Also, another tip that somebody gave me, what's all that, is I'm going to reuse this, but they said run it through a coffee filter. I got the screws in there too, to get the particles out of there before you put it back in the container, because it's quite costly. So now I believe I'll scrub these a little bit. Okay, a little water. Probably should put some soap in there too, but I'm not in the mood. Okay, the hardened jaws have been scrubbed, and then I blew the water off of them so they're dry, and then you got to immediately oil them to prevent that flash rusting. So I'll rub that in real well. Be sure and do that right away, the dowel pin too. Then I, of course, will wipe off the extra because it's messy. Okay, these vise jaws look very, very good, almost like new. So I'll wipe off the excess oil here. I kind of like that color. So, examining very careful, I don't see any damage. Yeah, right there is the only damage, but it sure is minimal. I had forgotten that Wilton uses dowel pins in the jaws for the alignment. And they sell different kinds of jaws and jaw caps and just all kinds of accessories. I really like the Wilton company, and I do not work for them. But let me show you one of their weaknesses, and then that will conclude part 1. 45 years ago when I was teaching, all of the vices in the shop, and there probably was a dozen of them, were Wilton brand. And what happened to 2 of them, as I remember, the beam here, I'm going to call this the beam, round beam, bent. And that happened because the students were tightening, I don't know what they held in there, but they had the vise wide open like this and probably put the muscle on it, and it bent this. Now, I called Wilton, and representatives came down, or a representative came down to the school, looked at it, and seemed very indifferent. He made no offer at all to make it right, but I suppose they were out of warranty, but I got no apology even, but those vices had to be thrown out. I want to show you one more thing before I close out here. This Parker vise is probably 80 years old, but many of the square-beamed vices, even when they're new, have an awful lot of slop in them. Now, granted, this one is probably badly worn, but you won't see that so much on the Wiltons. With that key in there, it's really a very tight vise, but of course this is virtually brand new, so probably a bad comparison, but you get the idea. All right, that concludes part 1. Hope to see you in part 2 as I paint and mask and reassemble and gab a little bit more about these great Wilton vices. See you then. So long for now. Be sure and leave a comment, maybe even a thumbs up. Well, let me get started by removing the jaws. I've already loosened these up just a little bit with a big Allen wrench, and let's spin them off with the DeWalt. Wow. Wow. Wow.